And believe me, nothing will be private. The goal is to have everything on computer in the AI records. So nothing in your life will be private.
We've been deluded into this place where science has made our lives, simpler, and we have not been made capable or independent. On the contrary, so I think as society, we have to take responsibility for that because we went along with it. We bought the drug. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to GBN Originals. It's my pleasure today to introduce my guest, Mark Charman. He was a long-time TV exec with ITV and Sky TV. More recently, though, he's been making independent films with independent filmmakers. His latest offering in that context is called The Agenda, Their Vision, Your Future. I've watched it a couple of times, found it compelling to say the least. There's many adjectives I could use, but thank you very much for joining me today, Mark.
My pleasure.
To get right into it, for those watching this who haven't yet watched The Agenda, could you maybe give a summary of what it's about?
Well, I think if I quote Nick Hudson at the top of the film, he says that there's always been a lust for power and the lust to control other people. And throughout time, the problem is that those who would control now have the tools to do it through digital ID, surveillance, AI, and digital currencies. They can actually control almost every aspect of our lives. And the tool for delivering this seems to be the United Nations Agenda 2030, which not many of the public are aware of, and yet it's such an enormous commitment. It's a master plan to save the world, but in actual fact, it's a master plan to control the world and every aspect of life on Earth. They want, under the auspices of the United Nations, to check it and manage it. And what it actually is, the United Nations is very much influenced by the very wealthy, the oligarchs, if you will. And it's a recurrence of a long lost dream called technocracy. Going back to the 1930s, there was a belief that the world is too big and too important to be decided by democracy and democratic vote of ordinary people. And everything should be decided by the very wealthy, who would then appoint scientists and academics and so-called experts to control all aspects of life. And that really is the goal that the film's about. It's how the United Nations is, in our view, and many experts' view, being used as a tool or a vehicle to deliver this long-held ambition. Go on. It boils down to some definite chapters. The surveillance chapter is very worrying about how they can watch us and actually dictate how we think. But of course, it also goes into the change of currency, the fiat currency, which we all know is predicted to collapse, and the new currency is likely to be based on tokens or based on the natural world, natural assets, and the use of carbon. And of course, to make all that work, you have to believe that there is a climate crisis caused by carbon dioxide. And we argue, or experts within our film argue, that actually that's just a tool of control. And actually there is no real climate crisis, and it's being used to force net zero. And going again right back to technocracy, at the hub of it was controlling the world's resources, controlling energy, controlling food, controlling power. And it's the same script, but with the technological edge.
It strikes me, and I think the point is almost made by someone speaking in the film, that it's been very clever the way in which positive sounding, benign sounding bodies have been co-opted by this. so that it's the United Nations Agenda 2030, and also involved are the World Health Organization. There are groups that people would just quietly assume had all of our best, intentions, had all of our best hopes in hand. And it's by that subterfuge, isn't it, that I think when you say that people aren't seeing the threat in Agenda 2030, it's because it seems to be, and it's presented as being under the aegis of entities that we've been raised to trust.
Absolutely. But of course, the United Nations and the document, the Agenda 2030, is absolutely full of contradictions. And when you look, one of the experts is an American investigative journalist called Alex Newman. And he's got a lovely phrase. He says, you have to understand UNEs to understand what it's really all about. And it's a subterfuge. It appears to be to save the world, but actually, as I said before, it's a plan to control the world. And behind the United Nations are these very powerful people and financial bodies twisting, according to our film, twisting the agenda to suit their own desires. It's quite interesting to look at the whole farming issue, but we'll come to that later, presumably.
I first became aware of what is now Agenda 2030 when listening to the late departed Rosa Cora, and I became preoccupied with what she had to say. It was she frightened the living daylights out of me when I was listening to her years ago, talking about really, I suppose, an earlier iteration of what is now Agenda 2030. But she had spotted it. She had she had sort of detected the DNA of this nefarious scheme. I wonder, what was your tipping point, so to speak, which persuaded you that the time had come to make this film?
Well, it was really my wife, Patricia, who first saw Rosa Core's presentation via Sandy Adams, and we went to see Sandy make a presentation in Glastonbury, of all places. And we said to each other, this could be worth investigating and worth making a film about. Of course, that was just the start. And I got back in touch with Phil Wiseman at Oracle Films, who we collaborated before on Safe and Effective, A Second Opinion, our film about vaccine injuries. And we had a sit down and we had a chat and we began to do the work. And of course, it just evolved over a period of a year to 18 months to 2 years. We didn't ever think that we would come up with such a depth and such length. But it's a bit like a builder. When you have your house renovated and they take away a piece of wall and there's something worse behind it. It was like that. Everything we uncovered, and Patricia used to send us new material almost every day, almost every hour, actually. And of course, we enlisted the help of, I think, the right experts. I mean, Patrick Wood, who's an expert in technocracy, is fantastic. Alex Newman, Catherine Austin Fitz, who has been in American government and has been in central banking. These are people who know because they've been part of it, and what they told us and what comes across in the interviews was eye-opening, really.
I mentioned that Rosa Cora had frightened the living daylights out of me, but Catherine Austin Fitz also similarly terrified me years ago when I first started listening to her content. I actually wrote down something that she says in the agenda. The general public cannot fathom the psychopathy of the vision that they're facing, which is chilling. The use of psychopathy. Why is it, do you think, that so many people, even when so much of this information has been out there, not necessarily all gathered into one place in the very helpful way that it is in your film, The Agenda, but this information is out there, and yet even now, as I would say the door of the digital cage is about to snap shut behind us, so many people seem to remain oblivious to the existential threat faced.
Well, I don't think people are even aware of the term Agenda 2030. It's massive international movement through the United Nations, backed by 190 odd states, governments, countries. But it isn't made massively public, and it's certainly not examined in the press. But of course, I'm an old school journalist, Neil, and I like to, I've grown up looking at both sides of a story and not believing in what anybody tells us. That seems to have gone, right through COVID and right through the Ukraine crisis and Gaza and everything. I'm not sure that we're ever told the truth anymore. I won't pretend that our film is balanced, because it isn't. It's telling what we think is one side of the story, because the other side either isn't told at all or it's told in a different way. But I just think the role of a journalist to question seems to have gone out our mainstream media, and it's very depressing. I think if there was still the same thirst for information, for the truth, a lot of this would have already been examined, either on television or in the mainstream newspapers.
I find that I'm not disputing what you're saying, but I find it beggars my belief. I'm confused as to the way in which fellow human beings have evolved or are evolving, and what's happening to human consciousness. Because at the very least, whether you think what's being proposed here is good or bad, setting that aside, it's profoundly fascinating what's in play here. There's quite a lengthy sequence, detailing the extent to which facial recognition is there in the background of all of our lives, and it's there, capturing data about children, toddlers in playgroups playing games, games that are being designed and marketed for the youngest children. Have literally hidden within them cameras that are profiling and reading and understanding these children from the youngest age, and that will track them for the rest of their lives. And there are so many aspects of what is going on here that, at the very least, is deeply fascinating. And even that, I don't think people appreciate the extent to which, for example, facial recognition technology, the pitch that it has reached, and the ubiquitous nature of it in our lives.
Yes. That chapter with Ammon Jabi actually is is very illuminating. People say to me that, well, actually, what have we got to fear from digital IDs or from things, our information being held? If we've done nothing wrong, we've got nothing to fear. But that's kind of a naive view, because once you can get in the stage of collecting data on everybody, and then they begin to predict how you're going to think and what they can sell to you and what you might buy and what you might do. As Errol Schwab says in the film, we can reach the prescriptive stage where we don't even need elections anymore because we know how you're going to vote. Well, what it means is we're going to tell you how you're going to vote because we're going to condition your mind. It's very dangerous to have an entity knowing every single thing about you, and believe me, nothing will be private. The goal is to have everything on computer and in the AI records, so nothing in your life will be private. And we're the best in the world. We've all got something we'd rather the rest of the nation didn't know about. I've always thought it's like somebody giving you a questionnaire to fill in with every single aspect of your life, and your likes and your hates and maybe your preferences and your money and whatever and your family, and then writing it on a piece of paper and then distributing it to everybody in the country. It's just, who wants their life open like that? But of course, we're being caught because it's convenient. All of these new apps, and you go into any shop and people are paying on the phone or on their watches. It's convenient, and of course it's fun. A lot of entertainment is built around digital and AI, and it's a trap. I've come in stage in the film. It's like a drug dealer. You're fed all the harmless stuff and it's fun, but all of a sudden, once you're hooked, the nasty stuff comes in. And it's a very good analogy, because we're all being, in the name of convenience and safety and fun, dragged into this digital world, and suddenly, pink, the key turns and we can't get out. We're trapped, and everything becomes behind that digital wall. And there's a very interesting phrase in there. It goes from a natural trust to automatically deny everything. You have to prove who you are.
Yeah, yes, it's as you say. As you say, the answer that question that you posed, where people say, "Well, what do I have to fear? I'm a law-abiding citizen. Why should I worry about this?" I think surely the answer to that is that be aware that the gate, the door of the digital cage, has not yet closed with you on the inside of it. It's bait. What's there at the moment, what's in the public domain at the moment, is bait by definition. It's pulling people in. And there's another excellent phrase in the film about an inverted prison. People don't seem to see that they're cheering on almost, or they're just oblivious to the building around them of a situation where they will seem to be free. They'll be able to move about. They won't be able to see the bars of the digital cage, but everything that they want, be it access to their own finances, be it food to eat, fuel and energy to put in their cars and in their homes, will be under lock and key, and that they won't be able to open the door to any of the necessities of life, unless they're prepared to comply absolutely 100%, 24 hours of every day with every diktat that may be imposed upon them from people they didn't vote for, can't get rid of, and don't even know.
That's absolutely right. Absolutely right. It is the digital prison, and once you're in a situation when you reach the point where you can't access things unless you do so, you've gone completely over the line. And then they as Catherine Austin Fitz says in the film, they will run the currency. It'll be run not by the currency as you know it, but by rules. So you behave or you can't buy this, or you behave or you can't buy the other, or you've already used your carbon allocation, your carbon coupons for the month. You can't use any more. It's a control grid in every sense.
People say to me all the time, I'm sure they say to you, what can we do to stop it? How do we evade this? Do you have any answers for that question?
Most people who say the film say, goodness me, it scared me to death. And it's, what can we do? We don't actually set out in the film to say what we can do, because, we're storytellers. We don't make any of the points ourselves. We use experts to tell us their views and illustrate it very well. It's very difficult. It's very difficult to say to people, stop using technology, but that would help for sure. If you didn't rely so much on technology, even to the point of spending cash instead of using credit card all the time, or using your watch or using your phone, even that, if you're using cash, you're taking away one aspect of control. They don't know what you're spending your money on. But it's very hard. I think what comes first, what has to come first, and probably what we've tried to do with the film, is make people realize what the danger is and just how far it's gone. And it has gone a long way. We are very close to the point where they can shut the door.
What's the reception to the film so far?
There's been a lot of positive interest in the States in particular. The Highway did a piece on it, and one or two other channels as well.
Did you get any solace, any comfort yourself from while listening to the people that are the talking heads within the film, Catherine Austin Fitz, Nick Hudson, and so on and so on? Was there any sort of reassurance in seeing very clever people, very thoughtful people, very aware? I'm clutching. I know I'm clutching at straws, but there are in the Rebel Alliance. It's good to know that there are people with whom the force is strong. to use the Star Wars analogy.
There were many times during the make of the film that we said, can this really be right? Are we not going too far? But the caliber of expert we've got talking in the film, yes, it certainly gives you comfort that you're on the right tracking that we're not alone, and that people, intelligent, clever people, are spreading the word and analysing what's going on. But of course, what's happened more recently is that you can see it unfolding in real life in front of your eyes. The whole Palantir and Bill Gates, Trump's idea for a digital America, and over here, Tony Blair's always banging on about digital identities, and there's a Labour Party think tank at the moment pushing the same way for the Brit card. It's all coming. They are all for these digital identity, and of course, typically they use it as a solution to a problem. So the problem, for instance, is immigration. How do we control illegal immigration? How do we know more about the people that come? The answer is, of course, digital ID, but it's much more. That would be a Trojan horse to get it in. So, everything that Aman Jabir, the expert, said in the film, we can now see unfolding around us. Every street you go in this country is bristling with cameras, even in little towns, bristling with cameras. Again, it's for your safety, but they're collecting your info all of the time.
I wonder genuinely at the extent to which, I know that the part of the thesis of the film is that, and it is about making money. It's about commoditizing everything that swims, walks, breathes, flies, grows, can be mined, every blade of grass, every drop of water. I appreciate that, and I know that it's true, but so there's the profit motive, but it seems to me that deeper than that is this anti-human mindset, the psychopathy, I suppose, that Catherine Austin Fitts describes or mentions. So I think it's driven by fear. I wonder, and I don't really have an answer, but I wonder at the extent to which part of the solution is understanding that we're dealing with people who are frightened of humanity. They're frightened of other people. And would arguably be rid of them, but because they haven't quite worked up the nerve to be rid of them, they need to trap them like a spider under an upturned glass.
Well, Dr. David Hughes, is also a key interviewee in the film. He basically says that this lust for control as well has been going on for decades. But of course, the way the world has worked and the way that financial institutions and the very powerful have seemingly controlled politics across the world for a long time, a lot of it has been in secret. Because of the explosion of social media, a lot more people are now talking about what's really going on. And yes, as David Hughes says, they're now tobogganing towards the end game because they are afraid, because in the end, billions can control the few if they're aware of what's going on and if they get organized. So they are, I'm sure that whoever these shady figures are would be afraid that their secret is out and their secret societies have been punctured, and they may well be overrun unless they do something about it. So I think they do have fear. I think it's a very good point.
It's fascinating to me the way in which is also there in the film. There's so much in the film. It's so nuanced when I was watching it for the second time, that so recently to make mention in conversation of the Trilateral Commission or the Club of Rome or any of these, but the Bilderberg Group. Or to ask questions about the Rockefeller Foundation, and the financial influence of Rothschild, that empire was to attract instant ridicule. You shouted down as a conspiracy theorist, and yet those Trilateral Commission, Club of Rome, all of it. That which used to be, don't talk nonsense, you're just trying to frighten people, has now become common parlance, which surely also must be part of, or something else to be partly optimistic about. Yes,
you can only call people conspiracy theorists to a point, because as we're seeing at the moment, things are coming to fruition. I mean, it was quite interesting to see the Bilderberg Group spoke about population control at their recent meeting, which is a theme that does go right back to the Club of Rome and actually the 1992 Earth Summit, and through to Agenda 21, which has become Agenda 2030. It's population control, the idea that there are too many people for too few resources, has been on the front page of the world agenda for a long time. And of course, their answer is control from above, control everything, control the people, and have, control population growth, which, funnily enough, populations in a lot of Western nations are falling naturally at the moment. But yeah, it goes, and also going back to the Club of Rome, the whole idea of climate change and the IPCC is also linked to this controlling of the population. I mean, the IPCC is the authority on climate change, but it's really a political group, and it goes all the way back to Maurice Strong, who, at the same time as setting up the IPCC, was involved with the Rockefellers and big business, and also he's got a background that led to the WEF. There's conflict of interest all the way along the line. I think the great thing about being a conspiracy theorist is that sooner or later your theory will become fact, and that's a lot of what we're seeing at the moment. But again, it's down to social media. More and more people are writing about it and swapping ideas on these groups, and more people are understanding that there is a power that sits above most elected governments. It makes you wonder, actually, whether we've ever had any real democracy at all, because, as I said before, things that maybe happened in secret are now becoming far more open under the blaze of social media examination. I don't like the term conspiracy theory. It's like racist, right-wing bigot, homophobe, anti-Semitic. They're labels that are used to close down debate, and it's too easy for if you don't like what somebody says, just to use one of those labels.
It does seem as though we do have to take responsibility ourselves, because we have too many people have been too persuaded by and corrupted really by convenience, whereby lives have been made easier to the point where it seems increasingly to me we've been dumbed down, and we have had our usefulness and our utility eroded. Too few of us are actually able to do anything. Increasingly, too many people, although they've got smartphones in their pockets loaded with the wisdom of the ages, they don't know anything. No. Most people would struggle to remember a loved one's phone number, because it's logged in their contacts, and they just press a button.
You might even block it.
We've been deluded into this place where science has made our lives simpler. It's made our lives less energy dependent. We don't have to use the strength of our muscles and the sweat of our brows. Everything's done for us. But we have not been made clever. On the contrary, and we have not been made capable or independent. On the contrary. So I think as society, we have to take responsibility for that, because we went along with it. We bought the drug.
Well, that's true. If you get as far as the latter chapters of our film, we look at education and how the whole university and school system has been pushed in a certain direction. And in fact, there is a dumbing down. The critical thinking is not welcomed anymore. And just to take climate change as an example, the textbooks are full of man-made carbon dioxide, climate change. And if you don't go along with that as a pupil, when it comes to your exam, you're not going to get the best marks. If you question it, you won't get the best marks. So it's a conditioning process. It's they refer to it as the long march through the institutions, and it's been going on a long time. So I think there's a very deliberate dumbing down, if you will, of education, because with the coming of more and more AI and more computers, too many thinking people are going to cause a problem, really. I mean, as we say in the film, or Harari says in the film, what do we need humans for, and what do we need so many humans for? Because computers and AI get better at many, many jobs than humans themselves. So you could see an argument that said it's better to have a dumbed down population who aren't going to question too much and accept what's going on and accept all the entertainment and the drugs, just as they did in Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, which is frighteningly, the predictions in that are frighteningly accurate. It's easy to argue that it's been a deliberate policy, and we are creating a less inquisitive population.
Is there space for? Did any of your even off the record were any of the experts speculating about the potential power of civil disobedience, non-compliance? I'm not talking about taking to the streets with flaming torches and sharpened pitchforks, but just not taking a Brit card, not accepting a digital ID. In the same way that it didn't take a majority of people not taking the jabs to put an end to the threat of mandated vaccination. I do wonder if it would only take a stubborn minority of people not taking a digital ID to have a similar effect on the digital cage.
No, the only thing we say in the film is one thing, you could use less technology. That's all. I mean, I don't think it was our place and or the place of the film to go to that stage. We were trying to pull together all of the evidence on this would-be control grid that is happening around us. And as the people in the film argue, it's been a plan for a long, long time.
I just feel that simply saying no to something that's on offer is peaceable.
Yes, but
like I say, I'm not a proponent of violent revolution. I don't think there's ever been a popular revolution. Actually, I think they're mythical. But I do think just not joining in can be a powerful. Sometimes the only winning move is not to play.
Absolutely, there aren't enough people aware yet of what's happening. We're all being sucked into this world of high tech and convenience and safety without realizing the next stages. And that's what we tried to do with the film. We've tried to say, look, this might not happen, but here's what will happen. Better think about, what's coming and whether you want to be part of it or whether you want to stop it. Our job really in the film was to just lay out the possibilities and the technology and where the ambition may go.
Well, Mark Charman, I think you've absolutely done that. I'm not just saying this to be hyperbolic. I can't think of a film that I've watched in the last many years with more impact. I was so affected by it, so persuaded of the central argument, and I hope as many people as possible just take the 2 hours to sit and contemplate what is out there looming on the horizon like bad weather.
Well, thank you for the compliment. I mean, it's we hope it does the same. I mean, you don't make these things to win awards. You make these things to try and get as much information out to the public as possible.
There's a very interesting aspect to the film, which is to say that there's a history there. That while the technology is new, the determination to have this kind of control is not. And I wonder if you could just, recap for those who haven't seen the film, the evidence that's there for just how long the scaffolding has been being erected.
Well, initially, as I mentioned, it goes back to technocracy in the 1930s, but there was a significant event in the late 60s when the Club of Rome was formed, which is essentially a Rockefeller-backed initiative. They decided that the world couldn't go on as it was. There would be too many people and too few resources. And from that point on, out of that came the IPCC, the International Panel on Climate Change, and the Earth Summit of 1992, and Agenda 2021, which has now become Agenda 2030. And the underlying theme has always been too many people, not enough resources. And there was a man called Maurice Strong, who was one of these guys who were very clever to be involved in several different organizations at once. And he was very much part of the United Nations. He was a Rockefeller man. He was part of the Club of Rome. And actually, he was the instigator of the Earth Summit in 1992. And I think he was the Director General of the whole thing. And he was very instrumental in setting up the IPCC, the International Panel on Climate Change, which was a political body. It's not, and that really determined, in the latter part of the last century, that determined that CO2 was the cause of the warming climate, and it's the underlying principle. And really, since that point, hardly any research money from the IPCC has gone to any other theory. It's all gone to proving that CO2 is contributing to man-made climate change. There isn't actually any hard evidence at all. In fact, there's plenty of evidence against it. But all the money goes to researching, or most of the money goes to CO2 projects. And that infiltrates right down through civil society, through all these supposed charities, through all these groups who advise local councils. It all goes back to the IPCC, and it all goes back to Maurice Strong, who at the same time was launching the carbon markets. He was instrumental in setting up the markets for making money and out of carbon credits and carbon transfers. So you have to question the motives. Are the businessmen and the money men really concerned about the quality of life in the world, or are they using climate change and the threat of the change to quality of life to change their own fundamental system of money? And I think that's a question which will probably be answered over the next few years.
It does seem as though it all comes back to money, inevitably. That hackneyed line about follow the money. It's irresistible to wonder if everything else we're being invited to watch, all the crises, climate crisis, perma war, disease, pandemic, all of these eye-catching stories that we're distracted by, and yet increasingly it does look as though everything just comes back to money, and the control of its creation and its supply.
Yes. Money and power. Yeah, Patrick Wood makes the point in the film that all wealth comes out of the ground one way or another, and it's controlling those resources that gives people the power.
Well, once again, more power to your elbow, Mark Charman. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.